Okay, my friends. Let me see if I got my right notes here. We will officially begin the class. We were just finishing talking about the mark of the beast and the number of his name and the 666. You have the mark of the beast, which is the control of the outer gods over your the physical, the emotional, and the mind. The mark of the beast in the right hand symbolizes control over actions. The mark of the beast in the forehead symbolizes control over thoughts. But there's, in addition to the mark, it says people can't buy or sell unless they have the mark or the name of the beast is the second thing. The name of the beast, these are the bureaucrats of the world, okay? The bureaucrats, the ones that are put in authority over us, that are not elected, that tell us what to do and write all kinds of regulations that control us. And if you're one of these guys, well, you don't have any problem operating within the system. You can buy, nothing interferes with what you want to either buy or sell. And then, or the number of the beast. So you have the mark, the name, and the number. And of all humanity, it says all humanity has one of these three. And when you have the number, the mark of the beast is control from the emotional nature over the mind and the actions. Now the number of the beast is focuses on the emotional nature because it's 666. 6 is the number that controls the lower emotions. Okay, so if you have the number of the beast, it means that the outer authorities are controlling you, controlling the people by manipulating their lower emotions. So you watch this in politics all the time. They'll say, we're going to give you a bunch of free stuff if you vote for us and give us power. Okay, so that's appeals to your lower emotions. That has nothing to do with appealing to your soul or the higher part of yourself or helping you with your struggle to overcome things. It appeals to the lower self. So you have these three powers that that the beast, through his various tentacles, controls us and puts us in touch with the outer gods. Now we move to chapter 14, and it tells us how to escape the mark of the beast, the number of his name, and the 666. And I looked, and lo, a lamb stood upon Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his father's name written in their foreheads. So what does a lamb stand for, do you think?
Stands for the Christ within.
Right. Christ, it it's symbolic, of course, the Christ himself, but more specifically, as far as the disciple concerned, it stands for the Christ in you. Okay. And the lambs, what does the lamb like? The lamb is very submissive. So the lamb that stands on Mount Zion, the lamb stands for the disciple he hears the voice of the inner Christ and he submits to that voice. When you submit to that inner voice, you become a one of the lambs of God's, so to speak. And what does Mount Zion stand for? The lamb, the disciple submits to the inner voice, and when he does this, he then stands on Mount Zion. A mountain symbolizes higher consciousness. Okay, so when the lamb, the disciple who becomes the lamb, he submits, and when he submits to the voice within, his consciousness ascends. And that ascension of consciousness is symbolic of the Lamb standing on Mount Zion. Okay. Now, and with him, 144,000 having the Father's name written in their foreheads. What does 144,000 stand for? It has actually several meanings here.
Isn't that the petals of the crown chakra opening where you're connecting with the monad?
That's headed the right direction. Any more comments on that?
That would be the father, I would think, would be the monad.
Right. He's standing on Mount Zion, and he stands on Mount Zion because the centers have been open. Now, each one of the centers has a different number of petals, like the base chakra has just 4, the heart has 12, the center between the eyebrows has like 2 main ones, but 96 smaller ones. Now, all the petals and all the chakras clear up to the head center equals what number?
144,000?
Huh? 144.
Or okay, 144.
Okay. And how many petals in the crown chakra?
1,000.
Right, 1,000.
1,000.
Okay.
So you multiply.
Right. So you multiply that, you have the interplay of the crown chakra multiplying the 144 lower petals, you get 144,000. So you have 144,000 different types of subtle energies that's available. Now, when the disciple then ascends to Mount Zion, he can ascend when all the chakras are activated. Now, every single petal may not be completely stimulated, but they're all stimulated to some degree. And when they're stimulated to some degree, then the disciple has ascended to Mount Zion in consciousness. And with him, there are 144,000 subtle energies at play within his system. And when he ascends, what happens then? Having his Father's name in their foreheads. Now, that compares to people who are under the beast. What's in their forehead?
The way they think, the way they're controlled by outer authority.
Yeah,
Want?
in their forehead is what, though? What does it say specifically?
Their mind, their thinking.
The mark of the beast.
The
mark
mark of
or the number of his name or the name of the beast. One of those 3 things or all of them are in the forehead of the average person. But when the disciple ascends, he becomes like a lamb and submits to the inner voice of Christ. He ascends in consciousness to Mount Zion, and he activates the 144,000 subtle energies within the Christ system, so to speak. And then he discovers that he has the Father's name written in his forehead. Now it's there all along, even in the average person out there, even the bad guys, they have the Father's name in their foreheads, but they don't know it. But they're deceived into thinking that the name they have to go by is the name of the beast. And the name of the beast represents an authority that takes the place of God. Now, what's interesting about that outer authority is most people think, well, it's a man like Hitler. No, it can be a benevolent person. It could be a Mother Teresa or the Pope, or even a book, the Bible. It could be the Bible, Book of Mormon, uh, the Mormon prophet, leader of any organization. It could be a political leader that you like, that you follow as your highest authority, but that authority is always outer. Now, there's nothing wrong with outer authorities as long as it's confirmed by the inner authority. Like if Curtis says something and I believe it just because I think he's a really smart guy, then then I'm going by an outer authority. But if he says something that's true and my inner authority says what he said is true, then I'm not relying on him being authority, but he stimulated something in me that confirmed what he might have said.
But it
So,
has to strike a chord. A chord has to be
yeah.
struck.
So there's nothing wrong with outer authorities as long as you get the confirmation from the inner authority. The inner authority must be the final confirmation. So anyway, within ourselves, we uh, we stimulate the 144,000 vibrations, put them in like a tremendous guitar string that you pluck that just doesn't make one sound, but you have, or maybe one chord, but you have a tremendous chord that is plucked, and it's 144,000 vibrations blending together, producing a harmony that will be um, a
A good
tremendous
song.
a tremendous thing for the disciple to absorb. And then he comes to a realization that the Father's name is written in his forehead. Now, notice it says forehead, not his heart, or not his solar plexus, or not his feelings, but his forehead. Why do you suppose you have to look in the forehead to find the Father's name?
Well, it says you will sing a new song. So when you get these pedals all vibrating, it creates an energy field or a new song or a sound, like a sound that you can get in tune with, maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Any other ideas on that?
It's the place of the third eye. So it's an ability to see spiritually, and also it's the thought.
Yeah. Now it's not only the third eye, but it's the third eye uh, coordinating with the crown. And in the crown, you have a replica of the heart center. Okay. So the reason the reason it doesn't have you go to the heart itself is is that you have a reflection of the heart in the head. And so you have a combination of heart and mind in the forehead itself. Whereas if it directs you just to the heart center, uh, the mind aspect is lacking. But in the forehead, you have it all together. You have both heart and mind energies available there. That's why the Father's name has to be found in the forehead, not in any other the centers for the ultimate realization, but the ultimate realization will come in your forehead itself.
I got a little comment on that. The Tibetan says that when that happens, that will activate the pineal gland, and the pineal gland will revert to its original intention, which is to secrete hormones, new hormones, which um, when I was writing this book, it came to me that those hormones would knock out death genes and activate immortality genes or longevity genes from these hormones from this pineal gland in the land of pineal when the light comes on and kind of like Jacob when he had a wrestling match with the angel in the land of pineal, he went through the dark night of the soul and he awakened with a new name and a new blessing, and the new name was the name of God. And so the message was when you activate the pineal gland, you build Zion and stop dying.
Okay,
What do you think of
good
that?
good slogan there, Curtis. Okay, what is the father's name? Now, let's get somebody besides Curtis giving us a comment on that. Appreciate your input there, Curtis.
Yeah, you like the pineal gland analogy there?
Yeah, that's an interesting detail that occurs on the physical level because everything in the spirit affects us also in the physical to some degree. What is the Father's name? What is the Father's name that's written in your forehead?
I am.
Okay. What do you think? Is that true? What does that mean, I am?
I am
I
becoming.
I am is static. It should be I am becoming. Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah, and the Tibetan talks about the I am. He speaks about I am that, and I am that that I am, or I am becoming that which I decide to become. So you got three levels of the I am that he talks about. The I am is your essential self, which you were before you even incarnated. The I am that is what the average person is now. In each life, we become a distinct individual, have develop a temporary personality that we that comes and goes, and we I am that. Okay, like Ossoff is he is Ossoff right now. You know, a couple hundred years from now, he may be Sam somebody.
I used to
And
be Spinoza.
yeah, so he is that. Okay, Ossoff is that right now. I am that. Okay, and as far as his personality is concerned. So, and then I am that which I am, or I am becoming that which I decide to be, is the third aspect. But that gives us a hint. But what's the core meaning of having your father's name written in your forehead? What's the realization?
Freedom.
Well, it certainly brings freedom when this realization comes.
That you're God.
Pretty much. The realization is that you are one with God and bear the same name, which is God, which is really no name as we think of names, but it's an identity. Because what is a name? A name is supposed to tell you who you are. Okay. Maria is Maria, that she says, I am Maria. So we look at Maria, and when we hear that, we conjure up an image of Maria, and that's Maria. Okay. So when you realize that the Father's name is within you, what is the realization that dawns on you? Let's pick on old Scott over here. I bet he's got something to say about that.
Ask the question again, please.
You're as bad as me, Scott. So, so when it dawns on you that the Father's name is written in your forehead, the name represents your identity. What dawns on you when you realize the name of the Father, which is your true identity?
Hmm.
Now remember, you say you're Scott because that's your identity here in this world right now. So you
Yeah.
say, my name is Scott. Okay. And when you say that, what conjures up in our minds? We see an image of you in our minds when we hear that name, and we think of what a colorful personality you are and so on. And you're a little bit different than Maria or Curtis or Asaf or Ed. And so when you say, I am Scott, or anybody mentions your name, we conjure up an image. So, what happens when you realize you have the name of the Father?
Well, the, offhand, it's a milestone that has to be achieved in your progression on the spiritual path. The so uh if you're at that point, then you're ready to gain a greater understanding of your true nature and the true nature of God. But specifically, when you ask that question, I the answer that came to me was that we immediately should see that worthiness is not part of the equation. You are worthy to be anywhere and to do anything and to participate in any faction of life just because of who you are. And the holdbacks of the personality of who you think you are at that point are removed, and it would be a monumental shift in your belief system that should shake the pillars and destroy a lot of things, a lot of other false beliefs that have been you know having their acidic effect on eroding your a lot of different areas of your thinking is what I think would happen at that point.
Yeah, okay.
And I didn't
I'm
answer your
thinking like
question, did
then
I?
you are a co.
Yeah, go ahead, Vibeke.
I'm thinking of being a co-creator.
Right.
You
Okay.
have an aha moment. You have an awakening. Aha. In last year, I talked about the sound of awe, the creative sound of God and all that is created through the sound, the sacred sound of the ah, so maybe you hear that creative sacred sound resonating in your higher being.
Okay, these are all good thoughts taking us the right direction. Think of this. The Yeah, you had something, Adam?
I was just going to say when we completely submit, when we realize that we're God, we completely submit to that soul, the higher self, and then we act. So we have a complete willingness to act according to the soul. We're no longer acting as the personality.
Yeah, that's certainly true. Now consider this. Your name, like Adam, who I'm looking at right now, That's his identity. If you have the Father's name in your forehead, it, it means you have discovered that you are not Adam. That's not your true identity. Your identity is with the Father, with the Creator, with the one God. And what did Jesus say? He said, I and my Father are one. And it is God's will that you be one with me as I am one with the Father. Okay? So, this oneness, when we understand that oneness, and it's more than just a bunch of people agreeing together, it's what goes way beyond that. The oneness means that we are an extension of God, like it says in the very first part of Genesis, that we are created in God's image. We are a projection of God itself. And as a projection, our identity lies with the wholeness of God itself. And so, even though we are apart, we are like a molecule in the ocean of life. Yet, as a molecule with the ocean, we can identify with the ocean itself. Yet the molecules of water in the ocean remain intact with their individual identity, yet they can say, I am the ocean. The name which I identify with is the ocean itself. That's my true identity. And so your true identity is a oneness with God itself. And when you realize this, then you become, it's like the chicken and the egg. The three things happen kind of together. You submit as a lamb, you ascend in consciousness, you stimulate, you're stimulated by 144,000 interplaying vibrational points, and you realize that you are one with God. You are an actual extension of God itself, sharing all of the attributes of God. And when this happens, the person becomes one of the 144,000. Now, on a physical level, this also has an interpretation. There are, this 144,000 is a symbolic number of the people that really have a true understanding of the Christ in the era that the Christ presides over, and that's the Piscean age. In the Piscean age, which lasted over 2,000 years, there's only a very small number that identify, that have discovered their true identity and understand the true message that the Christ was trying to reveal to the world. Now, in the world itself today, there are about 3 billion Christians. And since the the appearance of the Christ, it's probably been 5 or 6 billion altogether. That means if you just take the figure 3 billion and figure out if there was 144,000 people in the last 2,000 years that really perceived the true message, that would be about 1 out of 20 to 40,000 people, not very many. But when you look at giving out messages of light, and even in this era, what percentage of the people out there can see it? Very few.
Not very many.
Yeah, you give a glamorous message, like I could probably make up something that would attract a big following and talk about how I'm in contact with a bunch of entities from Sirius, and there's so many planets there, and on a certain planet there's a bunch of stuff happening, and that would razzle dazzle a lot of people on an astral level, but it wouldn't really get anywhere, you know. But but when you talk about spiritual principles, you have to think about that, and you have to absorb them through the soul. And there's only a handful of people that really uh, are attracted by a higher spiritual vibration. And the reason this is so is there's one major reason, and I call this spiritual laziness. Is that people just want a cut and dried answer. They say, well, I want this to be true, or I want this answer, and now he gets an answer, and that's it. No more seeking involved, no more effort required. Uh, the second coming will happen a certain date, and you go up to a mountaintop, and you're going to meet Jesus, ascend to heaven. You don't have to do anything else. Just trust me, that's what's going to happen. And no more thinking involved, but a true teacher manifests, and there's effort in understanding, effort in following the new light. Nobody's going to come do it for you. Nobody's going to say just believe in me and everything will be taken care of. There's an effort required. And it's like DK said, he said that he is where he is because of strenuous spiritual effort on his part.
Because he struggled and wrestled his way into a greater measure of enlightenment.
Oh, good quote there, Curtis. That's the exact quote. And
So in California, we used to call that the average seeker, he wanted microwave enlightenment. Microwave. I want to, right now, I want it easy to understand. I want to be able to just assimilate it, and I want it. I want to be enlightened. Like microwave. That's what we kind of laughed at that because that's how a lot of people were in Los Angeles.
But what's interesting is when um, the disciple submits as a lamb to the inner voice, it is easy to understand. But where the difficulty is keeping the mind steady in the light and not letting the outer personality stuff distract you. And then he gets into things if he memorizes certain things, he thinks he understands, but he doesn't really understand. The true understanding only comes from within. And another great uh, mistake many average seekers make is, like I say, they are always attracted by the outer rather than the inner, and they go by signs. How many people talk about signs as if that's something to really go by? But do you remember what Jesus said about people that are governed by signs? Anybody remember what he actually said about that? He said, a wicked and adulterous generation seeketh after signs. Yet, even though he said that point blank very clearly, you hear Christians all over the place, not only Christians, New Agers, everybody talking about, oh yeah, I got this sign, and it's telling me I need to do this, and so I find that people that are governed by signs and then go by the signs, it usually almost always leads them in the wrong direction because that's outer. Now, if you see a sign, it's like an authority. if you hear an authority speak and you get confirmation from within, then you're going from within, you're not going from without. But if you go by some sign that you're supposed to marry a certain person because of some sign, and you don't get confirmation from within, you're liable to be making a big mistake. So the woman that gets in falls for this bad boy motorcycle guy with a leather jacket and everything. She gets some sign that, oh yeah, I'm supposed to marry him to help him out, and then the marriage turns into a disaster. She did not get the inner confirmation on that, but she probably learned a lesson from
Well, yeah, but what kind of signs was the Christ talking about when he made that statement? Because we tend to be governed by astrological signs. We seek astrological signs to maybe not govern us, but to advise us. And there's different meanings to seeking a sign. And I could look, I could apply that to seeking signs for my soul also. And but I'm not sure who he was rebuking when he said that and what they were actually doing when they were looking for a sign. What, their definition of that.
Then he followed it up. He says, only sign that will be given this generation will be the sign of Jonah, where he was in the belly of the whale for 3 days and nights. And that he was talking about the sign given of his resurrection will be, he says, that's going to be the sign that you're going to be given. But then you won't believe it. But
Could it be like coincidental signs? James Redfield talked about following signs through coincidence. If something happens, the mailman drives by at a certain time and waves at you, then maybe you're going to get good news. Coincidental signs like that.
Well, I
well,
don't
right.
think the Christ did any indication that he was talking about that particular sign. I was asking what was he talking about? Well, who was he
Well,
rebuking, and what were they doing at the time he rebuked
they
them?
were demanding certain signs from Jesus, that he performed certain types of miracles that they were demanding. And he was saying that you just believe because you would only believe if I showed you some really great sign. And so he says, a wicked and adulterous generation seeketh for a sign. In other words, he was telling them, you're looking in the wrong place. You need to look with confirmation from within for a sign. Now, there are certain signs that do happen that are significant in your life. Matter of fact, we talked about this earlier. When we actually plan our lives, we put certain triggers and that will remind us, will stimulate things. Like when you meet the person you're supposed to marry, you may get some type of a sign that you pre-arranged. But then, say, uh, maybe you're at a karaoke bar with this person you're supposed to marry, and the guy gets up and sings a song, and that song is the trigger. Okay, so he hears this song, and that just triggers something in him. Okay, that's kind of a sign, but then it's confirmed by his soul. His soul registers that. But if you go by a sign that's not registered with the soul, then you're following the path of the wicked and adulterous generation that the Christ talked about there. So signs is an outer authority, and outer authority can be right, but it's if you trust in outer authorities completely, they're right part of the time and wrong part of the time. So you're going to be, if you're only going to be right half the time, or maybe even a third of the time, you're going to be wander way off in no man's land eventually. This is why it has to be confirmed by the Father within, the Spirit within. So if you get anything from an outer authority, whether it be a sign or a teaching from some master teacher or whatever, it has to be confirmed from within. So signs are outward. Everything outward is not good or evil, it's just what it is. But the confirmation always has to come from within. And so an outer sign has to be treated just like an outer authority. Maybe your favorite teacher is Eckhart Tolle or what Eckhart Tolle, and some of what he teaches is true, and some of it may not be true. So you just don't say, well, Tolle said this, so that's what it is. Okay, that's not the approach you need to take. You need to say this. He's an outward authority that a lot of people believe, but uh, let's check what he said with my soul within. And so the same applies to signs. The signs has to be interpreted. Is it really a sign, or is it just something that coincidentally happened?
Yeah, it's a coincidental thing.
There are a lot of coincidental happens. A lot of people say there are no coincidences. And that's kind of true in the fact that everything has a cause, but the cause may not be something that's you're supposed to follow. So not everything that happens is of spiritual significance that you're supposed to incorporate in your life. But there are certain things that are, and we have to always pay attention. Okay,
That's
any
where
more?
wisdom. That's where you have to have wisdom to know the difference.
Yeah. Okay, my friends, any more comments on this before we wrap it up here for this class?
Be wise as serpents and harmless as doves.
Right. So the Father's name, when you discover that you have the Father's name within you, you realize that all power in heaven and earth is given to you if you have the initiative to assume that power, to assume that name. Okay. So that's something all of us disciples struggle with, is maintaining that oneness, assuming that oneness, so that we can access all the powers of heaven and bring heaven and earth together, first of all in our own lives, and then with groups. Okay, my friends, let's move on to the meditation. Let us sound